Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and today we're taking a look inside Rob Liefeld's Captain America #1. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. Today we're continuing our look at the Heroes Reborn launch titles from 1996, September to be exact. We've already went through Jim Lee's Fantastic Four #1. The next one released was Captain America #1 by Rob Liefeld. This is a very infamous and notorious run. Obviously, Heroes Reborn, which gave Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld creative control over 4 Marvel titles, right? Captain America, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and Avengers. Liefeld had Captain America and the Avengers, and they boosted sales. It was meant to be a year long, maybe even longer. Rob Liefeld was outed halfway through, but he still says that these first few issues are some of his favorite works that he's ever done, his Captain America. Now, when this came out, it was a big deal. Now, obviously, Jim Lee's Fantastic Four was all the rage. And this, out of all 4 of the #1s that they launched for Heroes Reborn, was the lowest selling one. But it sold 275,000 copies. That's what's estimated, right? And previously, even though Captain America was on a critical upswing, it was only selling between 25 to 30,000 copies a month. So this was a successful relaunch of this character. It is also a reimagining of this character that I personally do believe stays very true to the core of the character, but it switches some things around in the mythos. And I think it's a pretty solid book, to be honest. When this book came out, I wasn't collecting Captain America, and so this was my opportunity to jump into a new #1 with Captain America. I had known Rob Liefeld, but I wasn't necessarily a fan of books like X-Force or his New Mutants. I just never really got into them. So this was really my first full-on experience with Rob Liefeld, and I enjoyed it. And I know that this gets lambasted critically, but commercially it was successful. And what's crazy is that Rob Liefeld, states that these numbers were so high, but the reason when they let him go after issue 6, when they let him go, and I've been rereading some of the Wizard stuff, the official explanation from Marvel was citing low sales. So we'll take a look at the sales as they go along, but issue #1 was a very big time launch for Captain America. It was a book that I really enjoyed at the time. Let's crack open it today and see what happens. So Rob Liefeld is writing and illustrating this book. We've got Jeph Loeb on the scripting duties, and we've got colors by Brian Haberlin and Extreme Color doing the separations. Joe Sibal is the inker. So Rob's working with an inker here. I think it would have been interesting if he would have inked it himself, but there's certain things in the inking I do like. Let's talk about the coloring real quick. I think that just kind of like the same thing with the Jim Lee Fantastic Four #1, I think the coloring improves in the second half of this book, but it's all brown, it's all orange, it's an overusage of digital molding and effects to make up for lack of backgrounds and stuff like that. But it is what it is, and this was the industry at the time. It's funny because Rob Liefeld was very critical of Marvel coloring from this era, saying it was very brown and orange, and here I am looking at his Captain America #1, and that's what I'm seeing, and I'm a little critical as well. Rob Liefeld faces. I love a Rob Liefeld face. They're instantaneously recognizable. I like the way that he draws. I have become quite a fan of Rob Liefeld over the last few years, and it's a pleasure to revisit this, which I think is a very strong issue. So it starts off with a Pledge of Allegiance and just Captain America, some poses, things like that. Decent work from Rob Liefeld. Very big figures, very disproportionate, but that is intentionally so. I love these wide-ass hatching. I love this wide-ass hatching that Rob Liefeld uses. The inking on this book is interesting. It seems very sparse for Rob Liefeld inking, and I actually think it helps elevate the work just a little bit. I know it's not going to be to everybody's taste, but I like it. But Captain America, Steve Rogers, in the modern day, This is one of the first big differences. He's not in suspended animation or anything like that. He wakes up in the modern day. He's having these dreams about him being Captain America, and he feels like he can't tell his wife, who is Peggy Carter. He can't tell his wife because he feels like somehow it's dangerous. I mean, this is what Rob Liefeld does. Incredibly intense faces. Everybody always has a scrunched up brow, lots of veins, big wide shoulders, inconsistencies, but I'm here to eat it up. You know, I love those like amateurish self-made comics from the 80s and stuff, and I think people are way too hard on Rob Liefeld and very critical. I've never gotten to meet him. I've never gotten to chat with him. I would love to, but one of the things that I've come to understand about Rob Liefeld that people really respect him for is his ideas. And this is a really solid reimagining of Captain America. So he wakes up, he's got a wife, he's got a kid. Makes you think of Ultimate Spider-Man, the new one by any chance? But it's a little bit different, obviously. And in no way is that book probably inspired by this. Though the Ultimate Marvel books are incredibly inspired by Heroes Reborn. This was the very first attempt Marvel ever did to reboot their franchise. This was the first Captain America #1 since like the 40s, right? So it's a very interesting time. Like, it was a big deal to have a new #1, and now they're all over the place. But he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's going to his job, he's got his friend who picks him up every morning. He loves his wife and kids. I love when Rob Liefeld draws these like super dark eyes with just a little bit of white in there. I don't know, for some reason I love that. Once again, that white ass hatching, I just love it. Even though it's orangey and brown, at least it does kind of separate the foreground and the background a little bit more. Maybe it's because of the sparse nature of the backgrounds and the line work itself. The inking is it's not as busy as some Rob Liefeld books are when they're inked. But of course, this is a different inker. But I really like, this is like what you're typically used to out of Rob Liefeld. Not so much like these kind of things, but his style was shifting and changing in the mid-90s, but still distinctly him. But Steve, on the way to work, keeps seeing this dude. He seems familiar to him, but he doesn't really know him. They're having lunch. He's telling his buddies about his dream. They're all laughing it off, but his buddy goes and calls somebody and says, "We may have a problem." Later at night, he's sleeping as the stations are going off the air. Back in the day, whenever the broadcast day would be over, they would play the national anthem or God Bless America. Here they're playing God Bless America. Lots of empty space here. It could seem lazy, but I don't know. This has a nice kind of dynamic flow through it. And where the Jim Lee book kind of lacked Fantastic Four #1, his Jim Lee's Fantastic Four #1 kind of lacks a little bit of a dynamic quality. It's right here. Big, bombastic look at Captain America in action, World War II, more of the dream sequence. I love this shot. I love it. He's drawing feet. I know they're weird looking feet, but he's drawing feet right there. And one thing, one of the reasons why I'm going through these Heroes Reborn books is because I've been going through Rob Liefeld's podcast, Robservations, and I just got done listening to like a big chunk of episodes about Heroes Reborn, and it got me wanting to revisit it. And one of the things he talks about in his podcast is how Wizard and other media, like comics media at the time, they would try to like mold your opinion, and a lot of opinions that people had about Rob Liefeld and Captain America by Rob Liefeld, they're all the same opinion. You always hear, every time I talk about Rob Liefeld, first thing I hear is, guy can't draw feet. All right, well, he can, but he's got a certain style, and he doesn't like drawing feet probably, and who would, right? Feet are kind of boring to draw, unless you're Quentin Tarantino. But he's a great idea guy. He is doing a really cool thing here with Captain America, where he says he's really influenced by X-Files. He knows how to look at what's popular and try to make something out of it, right? At this time, you got X-Files, you got the Mission Impossible movie. There's even a reference to that here. So Cap wakes up. I love this face. I love the way that's built. I love the lines on that. I really, really do. It is empty. It is spacious. But I think that actually helps, like I say, elevate this a little bit. And the coloring does start shifting and changing here. And these are some of the pages I think are colored a little bit better. But I love the use of the foreground and the background. And this is Ricky Barnes. So this is going to be This is going to be Rob Liefeld's Bucky. She's a young woman whose brother is interested in this thing called the World Party. They are a neo-Nazi group. So Captain America in the modern day still going to be fighting hate and still going to be fighting Nazism and racism and bigotry and stuff like that. They've got Red Skull tattoos and patches on his back. So that's Ricky's brother. That's his big goon friend. Look at the size of this dude's arm. It's ridiculous. But those are the Rob Liefeld stuff. Those are the Liefeld-isms that I absolutely love. We get introduced to the concept that Ricky Barnes is a dancer. Her brother is a complete jerk. He's interested in this racist world party. He's going to an event. And so that gets set up. And then we go to an abandoned church. And we get introduced to, once again, this 3-panel motif. We just saw it right here. Same kind of motif a little bit, but like inverted, really. Like small, small, big, big, small, small. So this is the introduction of one of our main villains, Master Man. This, artistically, is some of the strongest bits for me, is this whole sequence of Master Man. I love the art here. We're getting finer lines. We're getting a little bit more detail. Feels like maybe they realized that they were about to... Usually at the end of a book, you start feeling like the art's rushed. Here, it feels like they were rushing, just like in Fantastic Four #1. It feels like they were kind of rushing through the first bit and really focusing in on honing in a little bit more on the second bit. But we get introduced to Master Man. He's a super soldier. He's a Nazi super soldier that's still alive. He's the one trying to fulfill the dream of the Third Reich. He is reported that the old man has been spotted. The old man is the dude that Cap saw. And he's just spitting some racist vitriol here, like, how is it, Hopton, that one man, a black man, an inferior man, could frustrate your efforts so? So they're setting up neo-Nazism as a big bad here, and that's a good thing to do, and they're not doing it by delivering a whole bunch of speeches talking about how hate is bad. We know hate is bad, and we're seeing that, right? So he's at a rally where Ricky's brother is. I love all these just like, I mean... Everybody's doing the same pose. This is like so lazy, but I actually like this effect of the crowd. That's a tiny crowd. That looks like a bigger crowd. But there's a special agent there, and that's Tom Cruise, y'all. That's Tom Cruise. He is Agent Hunt, right? Mission Impossible was a big deal. Rob Liefeld did a cover for a Marvel Comics Mission Impossible adaptation, but he's there scoping it out, finds out that they have a whole bunch of nukes. So the World Party are not just a bunch of racists, but they have some nukes, and what's going on? We get a voice from behind him. I believe, if I remember correctly, that's going to be the voice of the Red Skull, but we don't see the Red Skull here. And Hunt gets taken out. Meanwhile, we go back to Captain America, Steve Rogers. He's taking a walk. He's got a lot on his mind. These dreams. This dude shows back up. He's like, I'm sorry, you got me confused. I'm not a captain of anything. I've never even been on a boat. He goes, nah, man, you've been on a boat. You've been on a destroyer, an aircraft carrier, wherever you were needed. He tells him, you're Steve Rogers. You're Captain America. And he leads him down here. He's like, you know World War II. He's like, what do I have to do with World War II? Everything. He leads him down into this secret room where he has Captain America's shield. And he's had Captain America's shield for a long time, holding on to it for the day that he was going to give it back to Captain America. The shield with those big-ass hands and that little head looks very small. It looks very small, but there is an inconsistency in Rob Liefeld's work. I don't know exactly his process. It doesn't feel like he builds figures from the ground up. It feels like he just starts drawing from memory, and that's what he does. And I think the inconsistencies are part of the charm of it. Like, look how big the shield looks now. Look how tiny this dude is. Captain America's kind of like floating above him a little bit, but also super tall. These are like proportions you see in things like Fist of the North Star and stuff like that. But he gives him the shield. He doesn't remember. All of a sudden, these agents show up because these are agents of Master Man who are there to take out this old man whose last name is Wilson, and I will spoil something here. He's related to Sam Wilson, who we will be introduced to in the pages coming soon. They launch these rockets into the building where they're at. They blow it up, and then out comes the shield. Really cool effect here. I remember really liking this kind of stuff. And once again, that 3-panel motif, the big boom, boom. It's like a pop, pop, boom. This is actually like a boom, pop, pop. But it works for me. I really do like it. And this is what we know from Rob Liefeld. There's our first glimpse of Steve Rogers now out of the explosion, very orangey, but very much aware now of who he is, his past, and it's all coming back to him. I just love this stupid ass hatching. I really, really do. There's something about that that really works for me. Great double page spread right here. Captain America having enough. You put down your weapons or there will be consequences. And then just a great fight sequence that comes across here from Rob Liefeld. Great sense of movement, great sense of pacing and setting everything up. That's an awesome shot of Cap throwing that shield. Yeah, that shield looks wonky, doesn't look perfect. You try to draw a Captain America shield in flight and see what you can do. I love when Rob Liefeld does this like scratchy like panel borders right there. It really works for me. I think that page is astounding. Look, that's a good foot. It's not so cone-shaped. Another great, like just, it's sparse. There's not any background, but the sense of movement. I mean, there's an energy to these layouts that I really appreciated then, and I even still appreciate it now. So just more of Captain America fighting. That's a very wonky figure, but I'm forgiving of it because, like I said, the wonkiness is part of the charm for me. I do think that's a great Rob Liefeld face. I love all the little individual stubble hairs right there for some reason. Cracks me up. And then another great double page spread right here of him finding Abe Wilson. And Abe Wilson's near death and he dies. He's like, hey, your son and your wife, they're not safe. He's like, rest easy, soldier. Your death will be avenged. And look, that is one pissed off Captain America. And straight up a Rob Liefeld face with Rob Liefeld lines, with Rob Liefeld grimacing, with Rob Liefeld popping veins. And I'm all here for it. It's got a quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. To fight a war, you must believe something with all your might. More than that, you must be willing to commit yourself to a course, perhaps a long and hard one, without being able to foresee exactly where you will come out. All that is required is that you should go as hard as you ever can. The rest belongs to fate. And then we go to the Helicarrier. So we were already introduced to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Fantastic Four #1, Wyatt Wingfoot. He is secretly working for Dr. Doom. Here we get introduced to Sharon Carter, Agent 13, Dum Dum Dugan, and Nick Fury. And I think that Nick Fury's pretty dope. Pouches, straps. That's the Nick Fury I know and love from the 90s right there. But they're like, hey, by the way, the Patriot is awake. And Fury goes, oh, is he? I don't know if I should be happy or sad, but one thing's for damn sure. This time, it's going to be on our turn. And there he is. So now they're going to go after Captain America and try to find him. So this whole book, Captain America fighting a new Nazi threat in the 90s, not ever in suspended animation, but somehow, for some reason, doesn't remember his past. That memory gets unlocked here when he gets caught in the explosion and is given his shield. Abe Wilson dies, sets up a little bit of motivation. He's got to go check on his family now. The government's seemingly against him. These neo-Nazis in the World Party are seemingly against him. And what this is going to be is a revelation of sorts in the next few issues that is very similar to the Winter Soldier story, very similar to things like the Bourne Identity, about Cap kind of being a sleeper agent. I love this concept. I love this idea. I love this approach. I feel like this at the time felt fresh. I remember it. It felt different than the other Marvel comics that were coming out, aside from like the... But basically what this did was it elevated, through Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, the core Marvel titles that had been failing in sales. Fantastic Four, Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man. It set them up on a level to hopefully be able to succeed as well as the Spider-Man and the X-Men books were doing. And it worked. I mean, like I said, this book sold 275,000 copies, issue #1, 2 covers on it. This is the cover A with a... I like this cover. I like the other cover too. But yeah, I still enjoy this issue. I think it's solid. I think it's decent. It brought back a lot of memories. It's been neat going through and listening to Rob's observations. But of course, Rob's going to be giving his side of the story, his perspective. I'd like to dive in a little bit more. That's why I was reading the Wizards and seeing what they were saying. But, you know, Rob Liefeld really kind of, on Rob's observations, kind of hit me on the head with it. I was like, how much of what I thought about comics at this time, how much of that was dictated by things like Wizard, right? If you look at the world of influence in the internet today, right? and it's so overwhelming. But back then, like, the one media voice for comics was Wizard, and a lot of people's opinions about Rob Liefeld are exactly what Wizard's opinions became about Rob Liefeld. And one of the things I did a few years ago because I used to always hate Spawn. I always thought Spawn was the terrible character, whatever. Even though back in the day I loved Spawn when it was first coming out, those first like 10, 12 issues. And even though back in the day I loved that animated series and I even loved that movie, I started getting into this like snobby Robbie type phase. And I decided to break out of that. And what I did was I was like, let's just pretend overnight that I'm a huge Spawn fan. And I went back and I reread a bunch of old Spawn and I started reading new Spawn and I loved it. And getting rid of this like pretentious idea of like the same opinion everybody has. You know, it gets so boring to me. Like, it is a bold statement today to say, I love Rob Liefeld's Captain America. That's silly to me. I love Rob Liefeld's Captain America. I think it's great. Now, if you don't like it, that's fine too. But so many opinions are not informed. They're just kind of a mimicry of what is the popular opinion. I see it all the time. I see it all the damn time. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight movies were very popular. And I remember when they came out, everybody loved them. Nowadays, people kind of want to talk shit about them for some reason. It's weird the way that popular opinion changes over time, and a lot of people just get lumped into the more popular idea, even people that have never read something. So I bet if you ask most people, they'll go, oh, Rob Liefeld's Captain America sucks. They probably never read it. I like this concept. I like this art. It's wonky, but that's the charm of Rob Liefeld. It's not perfect, and that's what I like about it. And I think even Ed Piscor, who was one of the main reasons why I became such a Rob Liefeld fan over the last few years, he said that Rob Liefeld made him feel like he could do this. You know, not everything has to be perfect. Is the concept there? Is the energy there? Is the enthusiasm there? And I really do feel in these pages, especially having gone through all the Youngblood stuff and all the New Mutant stuff, I really do feel Rob Liefeld had a passion for this book. It is still something that he says he's incredibly proud of. It works for me. I have a little bit of problems with some of the coloring, but aside from that, it's not as bad as the Fantastic Four coloring, the Jim Lee one. But I enjoy this issue. It's exciting. I remember reading it at the time. Sliders. But anyway, I thought it was solid. That's my recollections. That's my thoughts today. What do you think? Are you a Rob Liefeld fan? Are you not? Do you think he can't draw feet? Let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Let's keep this conversation going. Next up will be Iron Man #1 from Jim Lee and artist Whilce Portacio. It's been a long time since I dived into that one too, so let me know. You want to see more of Rob Liefeld's Captain Americas? Because whether you want it or not, I'm probably going to give it to you because it gave me a good excuse to just go through his whole run again. And after reading or listening to that podcast, he says these first 5-6 issues of Captain America, some of his most proud work he's ever done. So let's check it out. Jeph Loeb did a great job on the script too. I thought it was handled fine, even though it is annoying when it's just like, oh, this is the Pledge of Allegiance. Here's God Bless America. Here's a quote. But that's something Rob likes to do. Anyway, I like this book. What do you think? Check us out over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you so much for checking out this video. I've been rocking Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station.